Welcome back to this course on carbon footprint calculator. I plan to show you certain appliances which we encounter at our home and the typical rating of those appliances and explain you how these ratings are useful in designing the carbon footprint calculator. Look at this. This is the typical kitchen appliance. You see that there is a coffee maker, and the coffee maker has a typically a running wattage or rating of 1000 watt. 1000 watt is 1 kilowatt, and the surge wattage is 0. So when you account for a coffee maker in our calculations of electricity consumption, one can make use of this data. For example, if you have a coffee maker and typically if you take this running wattage of 1 kilowatt, and if the coffee maker is operational for 1 hour, then this coffee maker would consume an electricity of 1 kilowatt hour, 1 kWh. So this is how this table can be made use of. You see a coffee maker. Now you see a deep freezer. A deep freezer, you'll have an additional wattage or a surge wattage. Uh, when you start the appliance, okay, then the motor would draw electricity for a while, and that could be called as a surge wattage. And during its regular operation, the wattage would be called as a running wattage. Okay, so there are some appliances which would draw more current when you start the machine, right? So that is also need a proper calculation, especially when you are interested in a finer calculation of a carbon footprint. For a general calculation of carbon footprint, as we discussed earlier, we can just go with the electricity bill which the consumer gives you, right? This information about the kitchen appliances or any other appliances and its wattage is also useful when if you want to figure out how do you want to reduce your carbon footprint. Okay, so let us have a neat look at this list. You find here the microwave typically is consuming 1 kilowatt rating. A refrigerator is having a wattage of 700 watts. A toaster would have a typically wattage of 850 watts. A dishwasher would have 1.5 kilowatts. Okay, so this are the typical kitchen appliances. There are other appliances at home which one may or may not have, depending upon the size of the household and its applications. Like, for example, a person who is doing running on a treadmill at home would typically consume 280 watts. But when you start the treadmill, sudden increase in the load would be there, and it would be 900 watts. So you start the treadmill, the consumption will be 900 watt, and as you run on the treadmill, the consumption would be 280 watts, right? If there is a security system at home, typically it might consume 500 watt. One might have a office, and the office might have a scanner, a projector, a printer, right? This especially this appliances you see at a office, right? So that wattage is also given. uh, Copying machine, Xerox machine, or copy machine would have a 1600 wattage. These are the typical wattage, and if you know the make of the appliances which you are making, then one can have a finer look at your own appliance and accordingly enter the correct wattage. If you don't have that data, then this typical data would be useful in designing the calculator. Okay, all this data can be fed into your program, where you might ask your user that whether you are having electric kettle, right? How many electric kettles, and if he knows the wattage, then it's good. If it is not, if the user is not able to specify the wattage, then one can take these default values. So one can enter these values in the calculator, especially when you want to calculate the carbon footprint because of electricity consuming appliances like this, right? So typically you see your laptop is consuming 300 watt, a monitor would consume around 250 watts, right? Internet router would have a small wattage of 5 watt. A home phone would have a 3 watt. Okay, the video game system would consume 40 watt. A stereo would consume a lot, 450 watt. Right? A electric shaver, 15 watt. If you iron your clothes at home, then it is going to consume 1200 watt. Right? You have an electric shaver, and if you charge that shaver, then that would also be consuming some electricity. A washing machine typically has a higher wattage of around 1000 watts, and the surge wattage is around 2000 watts. Okay, so these are the typical values. Ceiling fan, one that might have, and that has a typical wattage of 60 watt. Again, you see that when you start the fan, momentarily the consumption would be more, this would be 70 watt. But when you keep it in operation, then it would consume 60 watt, right? So surge wattage would be typically for starting. AC machines, depending upon the capacity of the machine, it would be consuming some 1500 watt to 4000 wattage. Okay. Then there are heat pumps at some places. Space heaters are used depending upon where you are located climatically, right? A window AC might be used. A water pump, typically water pump might be used to pump the water, right? So all these are the common appliances. It's a good idea to give all this in your calculator app, right? So that one can figure out the actual consumption of the these appliances, and more importantly, if you want to suggest the reduction strategy for a carbon footprint, then one can always recommend this on based on this inputs, right? So this data can be easily obtained from doing a good internet search. Also, this data could be obtained from the manuals which are provided by the appliance maker. Okay, so it's not a very difficult job to find the ratings of the appliances which you are using, right? Thank you very much. Bye for now.